So remember, we have been talking about physical quantities, which we said they are measurable, properties of, an object, or measurable properties of matter. Now, there's one thing that you need to remember when it comes to physical quantity. A physical quantity must be stated in magnitude with a unit. So there are two things that you need to remember. Any physical quantity should have magnitude. Now, what do I mean when I say magnitude? Well, when we use the word magnitude, we mean, it should have the size, how big something is. So it should have the magnitude or the size with a unit that you do have. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Let's say that you do have a physical quantity. So that physical quantity, let me say the physical quantity that I'm talking about is length of a particular object that I've measured. Let's say the length of a particular object is 100, then 100 meters there. So you can see the length here. When you look at the length here, that length is a physical quantity. Then of course, what do you see there? You do have what we are calling as being a number. You do have that number there. So that number is representing what we call as being the magnitude or the size of what you have measured. Then the small m there is representing a unit. And in physics, you shouldn't forget to indicate units where they are supposed to be, because it means it is going to be wrong. If a unit may help you to identify the physical, it may help you to identify the physical quantity that you are dealing with. And hence, when stating any physical quantity, remember it should show the magnitude, the size, and also a unit that you are going to have. For example, if I'm talking about a physical quantity like speed, I know speed is equal to, distance divided by time. So therefore, the speed is equal to, the speed is represented by s, distance, small letter d, and by time, small letter t. Let's say maybe the distance is 10 meters, so I'll write 10 meters over my time there. In this case is going to be 2, the SI unit, remember, is seconds, so 2 seconds. So 2 into how many times does 2 go into 10? It is 5. Then you are going to write meter, remember there's over, so that is going to be per second there. That's what you can see. So you can see speed as a physical quantity is stated in terms of the magnitude, and we also have what we are calling as being the unit. And even when I'm replacing in the formula, you can imagine I've written also the units. This is actually the correct way of trying to make calculations in physics. Unlike someone says S is equal to S, D over T is equal to 10 over 2, then they just say 5 meters per second. Of course, we are going to be using this in most cases in layman, but the actual correct one that you need to use when you are carrying out any of your calculations is, as you replace, you also replace with a unit where possible. But of course, as we go on, you may see me use this one, of course, but the correct way is actually doing it like that. Now, of course, we have talked about units. Sometimes units can be made to be very big, or you can make them to be very small, depending on the situation that you are dealing with. And therefore, it brings us to what we call as being, a prefix. So this side, we do have what we are calling as being the prefix. So now, when I talk about, the prefix, what exactly, do I mean? Well, simply say, when it comes to a prefix, we can simply say, it is simply an extra symbol, put in front of, a unit to make it either big or small. So we can simply say prefix is an extra, maybe let me use that word, is an extra symbol, put in front of a unit, to make it big or small. That's what we can say. So that is what we can say as being a prefix is. So it's an extra symbol put in front of a unit to make it big or small. So what do I mean, for example? Well, For example, when it comes, when it comes to what we are calling as being, you may have power. If I talk about power, the unit for power is watt, represented by a capital letter, W there. But what you can find is that we can put up a unit in front of that. For example, I can write it as capital M, and I can also write, a W there. Remember, the W there represents what? But what does this symbol that I've put in red mean? Well, this is what we call as being a prefix. It can either make this unit to become either big or to be small. So this is a unit, and this side we do have what we call as being the prefix. So the prefix in front can either be made to be very big depending on the value of the prefix that we do have. So in my discussion, I want to show you some of the prefix that we do have and their meaning, because we are going to be using them, in our discussion as they give you in some questions. So it's important that you get to know these guys, because you are going to be using them. So what are the common ones that we are going to look at? Well, maybe I can start. There are a lot of them that I can talk about. For example, you can start with what we are calling as being tera. Yeah, tera is represented by capital letter T. Let me just we can start with what we are calling as being tera. This tera is represented by a capital letter T. Now, what does that capital letter T there? It stands for tera. What is the meaning of tera? Tera means 10 to the power 12. That's what tera means, 10 to the power 12. It's like you can think of a number. You can think of a number that has, let me just put up there. Maybe let me shift this and put the example there. You can think of a number, 1 with 12 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can think of a number with 12 zeros. That's what tera means. You have heard with your friends, you may talk about how many terabytes do you have? So it simply means tera is going to be in front there. So you can simply talk about tera, terabyte. Tera is capital T and bytes is B, or how many terabytes do you have? That's tera. That's the meaning of that, tera that we talk about. Let me give you some others that you are going to, come in contact with. You're going to be using things like giga, which is represented by a capital letter G. That's giga. Giga means 10 to the power 9. Think of a number with 9 zeros. That's what we mean. So that is, that is what we call as being giga. You have heard of the word maybe, gigawatt. Remember, like I said, W, capital W is for what? So I'll be using maybe that more often. So you can simply say gigawatt. So you can write and say, gigawatt. You can see this is a very big number. So you putting up giga means it's a very big, unit that you're talking about there. So you can simply talk about, gigawatt. All right. You can also have, apart from that, what we call as being mega. It is represented by capital letter M. What does mega mean? 10 to the power 6. That's what mega means. So you can think of a number with 6 zeros. In other words, a million there. So you can simply talk about MW. What does that M? If my unit is what? That simply means mega. So this means megawatt. How many megawatts? That's a very big number that you're having there. All right. Apart from that, we do have what we call as being kilo, represented by small letter K. That means 10 to the power 3, which is just the same as 1,000. So each time you hear of the word kilo, K, it simply means 1,000. You have heard of what we are calling as being, kilometer. Kilometer. It's a combination of, the unit, meter, and kilo is actually a prefix. that we do have there. So that is what you need to remember. These things, you need to become familiar with them because we are going to be using them. We can also find things like, deci. Deci, we use a small d. Deci simply means 10 to the power negative 1. Now I'm going to those that are very small. 10 to the power negative 1, there simply means, 0.1. That's what we mean. Or if you want, it's 1 over 10. That's what we mean. Decimeter. You have heard of decimeter. That is dm, decimeter. That's what we mean. So very important. You can see how later on you are going to be using or you are going to be making conversions. You can also have centi. You have heard of centi, small c. A centi means 10 to the power negative 2. Remember, I started from big, I'm reducing. I'm now going to those that are very small. Centi, you might have heard of centimeter. You might have heard of centimeter. Remember, meter is a unit, so centimeter. That's what we mean there. So this value is 0.0, this is 0.01. That's what that simply means there. So a very small number that you're going to be dealing with. Right? Another aspect that we can simply talk about, apart from that, the common one is milli, small letter m. Milli means 10 to the power negative 3, which this one means 1 over 10 to raised to the power 2. This one is 0.001. If you want, it's 1 over 10 to the power 3. And you have heard of milli. You have heard of millimeters. Millimeters, small m and small m there. That's what we mean. Apart from that, we do have what we can call as being micro. Micro is represented by mu, a symbol that looks like a u, but it's not really a u. That means 10 to the power negative 6. In other words, 0.1234 5 and the 1 there. You have heard of micro, maybe microwatt, very small unit there, microwatt. So microwatt, that's what we mean there. So micro, that may be, because this is very small, watt should be a little bit bigger there. Then the last but not the least at your level that you're going to look at, these are not the only prefix that we do have. As you advance, you are going to look at things like ecto, femto, eto, zyto, and so on and so forth. I'll just end on nano. Nano is small letter m. Nano means 10 to the power negative 9, which is 0.1234567, then a 1 there. So you can hear of nanometer, nanometer, nm. That is what we call nano. That can be nanometer. So that's what you need to remember. So these prefixes are very important and you're going to be using them. So in my next discussion, I'm actually going to look at how can you use them now to make some conversions. How can you use them to make some conversions in this case? So you can use them with any physical quantities that you have. So you can see from big to small. So those that are having raised to a negative index, those are very small. And those having positive index are very big or large, as we are calling it. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please, if you like it, you can subscribe so that we may continue to make more videos.